Good evening. I am Alyssa Taylor Stewart, Administrator in the Office of Equity, Engagement, and Partnerships. And on behalf of the entire Parent University team, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Parent University Workshop. Kim Dalton, Director of Human Resource Services, will share details about the LBUSD Uniform Complaint Procedures. This information will help parents and guardians understand how to request additional help when solving problems. I encourage you to engage with tonight's presentation by asking questions or sharing comments directly in the link available in the YouTube video frame. We'll do our best to answer all questions tonight, but just in case we don't, please know that we will be reaching out to you directly. So please share your contact information along with your questions. Thank you. And now let's welcome Ms. Kim Dalton.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you today. And if you see some weird lines on my face, it's just that afternoon sun coming in through my window. Try to move around a little bit here. It's great to have the sun out today and to have that nice breeze. But it'll just leave some weird lighting for a few minutes while the sun is going down. But I'm really glad to be here today and talk about the uniform complaint process and what that is and my role in that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. It'll take me just a second, and we will get going. So UCP stands for the Uniform Complaint Process, and that name uniform is talking about this complaint process is the same in all school districts in California. So the California Department of Education has put together the uniform complaint process based on legislation. And so every district, when we're investigating concerns, we follow the same format to make sure that we're providing thorough, fair, and impartial investigations. So you'll see my name and Steve Rockenbach's name on lots of the different pieces of information that go out to you. So I'm the Uniform Complaint Officer. So that means I just oversee the uniform complaint process for the district. And I'm also the Title IX coordinator. And Title IX is a federal law that talks about gender equity. And it also ensures that we are intervening in cases of sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, dating violence. And so I coordinate that as well. And you can see my contact information there. If you ever need to get in contact with me, you can just look under UCP. You could look under Title IX. You can look under Human Resources, and you'll find my name, my contact information, my phone number, and my email, and you're welcome to contact me in any of those ways. And then Steve Rockenbach is the Director of Employee Relations, which is also under the Human Resources umbrella. And he is our Equity Compliance Officer. So wherever you see my name, you'll see Steve's name linked with together. And you're always welcome to reach out to him as well. And between the two of us, we'll decide which is the best way to handle a situation. And so his contact information is there, and you would find him under Employee Relations. But again, we're on many different screens and web pages. So if you're ever looking for us, I'm sure you will be able to find our addresses. So when we talk about the uniform complaint procedures, what does that mean? So the main categories for uniform complaints are those that are discrimination, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So those are the four big buckets that fall under UCP. And when we talk about UCP, it's not only discrimination, but it's based on a protected class. So on the right-hand side, you can see all of the protected classes in the state of California. There's more than the federal government. So for example, if someone was making a discrimination allegation, for UCP, we would look to see, is it discrimination based on a protected class like religion or color or gender expression. So we're looking for those two to be together. Or is it bullying based on ethnicity? Is it bullying based on national origin? So we're looking for that connection between those four big areas and the subgroups that are protected. And so we can have a bullying case that's not related to one of those listed subgroups, and we would still investigate that. We would still try to remedy that, but it just doesn't fall under the UCP process. So to be under UCP, it has to be one of those four areas plus a subgroup that's protected. And then also these include complaints that fall under Title IX, which are based on gender, sexual harassment, or sexual violence. So when complaints come into me, I look to see, do they fall under UCP? First of all, is there a connection to a protected class? And then if it has something to do with based on sex or sexual harassment, then I will work with the school site or the family to determine if it falls under a uniform complaint process or the Title IX process, which is a bit more involved. So in addition to these four big categories and the protected classes, there are also all these other areas that fall under UCP. And these areas are categorical funds. So these are things the state of California funds. And so they want to make sure that their money is being spent properly, that it's being used to support students, and that it's being used in a non-discriminatory way. So you can see there's many different bullets there of areas that are funded by the state of California. Some of them may be federal as well. Excuse me. And so, for example, you see in the middle, education of pupils in foster care. When students are in foster care or have been away in a juvenile facility, they have rights. When they come into school districts, they have rights to have all the work they've done transfer into the new school district. And if they have to move again, they have a right to have their units transferred out. But it's not just even at a semester. Even if they were only in our district for a couple of weeks, we have to provide time for them as units so that it can go into their next school. So we are held accountable to that, and we make sure that we follow those rules. So if there's ever a question about preschool, or if we have a pregnant or parenting student, we need to make sure that they have access to accommodations if they're lactating. So all of these different areas, we also need to make sure that we are meeting those areas. And if there's ever a concern in one of these areas, you're welcome to contact me. One of the ones we hear a lot about is pupil fees down there at the bottom of the middle row. And that's because in California, you have access to a free and appropriate education. And so you shouldn't be asked to pay for things that are central to the classroom. So for example, if your students are dissecting an animal as part of science class, you shouldn't be asked to pay for that animal. The school should be providing that. If there's something that's happening at the school, like students are in a music class, then we're going to provide the things that they need in order to participate. So if you ever have a question about that, I would always say call the school. But if you're not getting a clear answer, you're welcome to give Steve or I a call, and we will help you out with that. So when we talk about UCP again, just to kind of recap. So any complaints about discrimination, harassment, intimidation, or bullying on the basis of a person's actual or perceived protected class, including sexual harassment. And where it's talking about actual or perceived, so we may have a student who identifies as perhaps gay, or it could be that other students perceive that student to be gay when they perhaps are not. And so, and because of that, maybe they're being bullied or teased based on their gender expression or their sexuality. And so we do not allow that type of behavior to occur because all of our students have the right to a safe environment to go to school so that they can focus on their learning. And so it's not a question of actual or perceived. It's, are you being teased based on what maybe someone thinks? Complaints regarding LCAP or pupil fees, and those can be filed anonymously. So uniform complaints generally have to have a name or a person associated with it because we write a report that we give to the person who makes the complaint. But LCAP or pupil fees do not require someone to give us their name because we want to make sure that, you know, we're looking at how our finances are used without anyone feeling like they might have retaliation against them. But most people do give their names because we're looking towards resolving issues. And that's our goal, is always to resolve an issue. And then any complaints by state or federally funded programs, and you can see the different ones there. Some of them we've already talked about, you know, migrant education, just different ones. And so if there's ever any concern, you can reach out to me or Steve, and we can let you know if it falls under one of these categories or maybe it doesn't, but we can direct you to the right place. So just thinking for a minute, what is not investigated under UCP? So we have A, bullying, 2, graduation requirements, C, discrimination, or D, pupil fees. And if we think about that, from what you've already heard, graduation requirements would not be investigated under UCP. Now, that doesn't mean that a family may not have a concern or complaint about graduation requirements, and they're welcome always to bring their concern and complaint to the district, but it wouldn't fall under this uniform complaint process, this investigative process that's set by the state of California. But it would probably be looked at by the high school office or perhaps a different office depending on what the concern was. So what's not covered under UCP? So complaints about graduation or promotion requirements, teacher or classroom assignments, grades, discipline, or retention determinations. Those are not part of the UCP process. Those are concerns that parents can have, and those are concerns that would go to the school site and to the level offices, such as the elementary office, the middle school office, and the high school office, and perhaps even special education. Personnel complaints. So if there is a concern about perhaps a teacher or someone who works in the cafeteria, those are personnel complaints, and they don't fall under the uniform complaint process. So again, those complaints would, you know, go to the school site and then perhaps to the level office or to the department where that person works. Any allegations of child abuse, those should be referred to Child Protective Services, DCFS. And we encourage, if you have a belief that a child is being abused, we would really encourage you to report that. Unless you have a job that you're a mandated reporter, such as all school personnel, it's your choice to report if you feel like a child is being abused, but we would encourage you to do that because we do want our children to be safe. And then any allegations of fraud or mismanagement of money. And again, we want our funds to be spent well. We go through auditing processes throughout the district several times a year in different areas. It could be on our overall budget or how we're spending our money to do construction. All of those things, we're always looking to make sure our money is being spent appropriately and well. But if you have an allegation of fraud or mismanagement, we do want to know that, but it would most likely go to our business office that would be looking at that. So when we talk about complaints and how we handle them, our goal as a district is to resolve complaints promptly and within the closest circle of contact. So what that means is that we want you to feel comfortable to go to your school site and share what your concerns are. Give those principals and APs and counselors a chance to try and resolve the conflict. And the reason for that is you're going to get the most prompt response from the school site. And at the school site, you have more than one person. If you started with the counselor and you don't feel like they quite understood what you were trying to say or your concern, you may have an assistant principal or a principal there who you could also talk with. If that's not working, if you shared your complaint, you don't think it's been resolved, then the next step would be to go to the level office or the department like special education. And again, sharing your concern with them so they have an opportunity to try to address it. And finally, the district UCP. Now, could you just file a district UCP? Of course you can. Anybody can do that. But when it's at the district level, we have 60 days to investigate. And so we have different investigators and they're doing a whole variety of investigations in the district. So it may take some time before they're able to start on your investigation. And we don't want the problem to continue while we're going through the investigative process, because they have to make arrangements to go to the site and talk with you and talk with the other family and all those different things. And so it can take extra time, and we want to try to resolve things as quickly as possible. So we always recommend starting off with the site so they can work to handle those problems as quickly as possible. And also because it builds trust between families and that site when we're working together to share concerns and try to solve them together. So, question to think about. Complaints must be turned in on district forms to be investigated. False. We do have forms. We have a uniform complaint form. We have a personnel form, a personnel complaint form. We have different forms for complaints, but they're just there to be helpful. So like on the uniform complaint form, it will say, okay, what's your allegation? And it will say discrimination, bullying, intimidation, harassment. And then it will list the different protective classes. And that just helps you to remember, oh yeah, I have to check one of these and one of these. So sometimes forms are helpful, but they're not necessary. So they have to be submitted in writing, however, for uniform complaints. We do need something in writing so we can understand the complaint and what the allegations are so we can begin to investigate. So if you're trying to resolve a complaint at the school letter, you can write a handwritten letter or send an email to the principal or another administrator describing the concern. And then the administrator will contact you about the concern, investigate, and work to resolve the issue. If you've gone through that process, you don't feel like it's really been resolved, then the next step would be to go to the department or the level office. So you can contact the elementary, middle school, or high school office with your concern. You can share the letter or email that you previously sent to the school site and tell them why you don't believe the concern has been resolved. And then the elementary, middle, or high school office will begin to look into your concern. And then I'm always available, and my team is always available to help out as well with trying to resolve concerns. So if you feel like, it's still not resolved, you can send a letter or email to me with your concern. I'll look to see if it falls within the uniform complaint procedures. And if so, we'll assign investigators to go and complete the complaint within the 60-day timeline. So we have board policies related to uniform complaint procedures. We have, first of all, uniform complaint procedure policy, which just talks about what a uniform complaint is, what falls under that procedure, how to file a complaint. We also, with that, send out every year, it's called the annual notice. So you'll see it at the beginning of the school year, sometimes in the middle of the school year, we'll send it out, and it will have the year on it because we update it yearly in case anything changes at the state level. And it basically just says, here are the categories that we accept complaints under for uniform complaint procedures. And then it has the form attached that you could make a complaint if you chose to use the form. We also have board policies about non-discrimination and harassment. We have those for both adults and for students. We have policies about sexual harassment, again, for adults and students. And then for our students, we also have policies about bullying. And so at the beginning of each school year, we go over those policies with the students, usually in an assembly or in a classroom setting, just talking about what's okay and what's not okay regarding how we treat each other and kind of the expectation for our behavior towards each other as we move through the school year. And if during the year someone maybe forgets one of those expectations, that's when we bring it forward to the administration so that they can investigate and put in place any corrective action. So you are encouraged to raise concerns at the school site and as needed at the district level, because our goal is to create a positive climate for reporting concerns and complaints. You know, we want to hear when something's not going well because we want your students to be successful. And if they're worried about coming to school or they don't want to go to a particular class or something of that nature, we want to know so we can step in and try to resolve that and work with your student and possibly other students to help them feel safe at school. So we are working to be proactive and preventive. So like I mentioned earlier, we have student training. So we ensure that all district students receive age-appropriate instruction and information on sexual harassment. That's actually part of our board policy, that students will receive that information. It's as simple as a lesson or an activity at the beginning of the year. And we don't really have student handbooks as much anymore because we are online, but we do have our guidelines for parents and students that's put out at the beginning of each school year. And again, that's an online, and you can find it in the A to Z index under guidelines that talks about the various rules and laws and all the different things related to the school districts. And we go over with our students what bullying is and how to report it and what happens if you're found to be bullying others. You know, we do have that mindset of corrective action. We want to teach our students. This is the time to teach them when they're in school what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in terms of behavior. Because once they're adults, there are very high consequences to inappropriate behaviors, especially things with threatening or hurting other people. So we want to make sure that when they're with us in K-12, that we are teaching them what's appropriate and not appropriate. And sometimes there are consequences that go with that. But so that we can go forward and they can be graduated from our system, productive citizens who are making choices that are positive for not only themselves, but for their community. And then for our staff, we also do training related to professional development. And so we provide information about early warning signs of harassing and intimidating behaviors and effective prevention and intervention strategies. We have training on sexual harassment. We have training on bullying. We have training each year on child mandated reporting. And so these things are all very important, and that's being proactive and preventative. So if we can recognize it, then we can name it and we can get help if needed or alert administration if their intervention is needed. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I think Ms. Taylor Stewart is going to maybe have some questions, and we'll answer those and just be available.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Dalton. It's a lot of information, and I know our parents have a lot to unpack. So one of the questions I received is, what if I'm not in a protected class? Can I still make a complaint using this process?
Yeah, so if it's not in a protected class, like if, the student, students unfortunately have, behaviors that they express to each other that are not always positive. And so we want to stop those behaviors that are not positive and encourage the appropriate behavior. So we always want to know when there's something going on that's, hurting a student, preventing them from learning, causing them distress. We always want to know that, but it may not fall under this particular process. So instead, it just may be talking with the school site and saying, this is the concern that's happening. How can we work together to address this? Under the UCP process, it would need to fall under one of those protected classes.
Okay, thank you. Another question, if I wanted to write a complaint about a staff member, is there someone to help me with writing it?
Sure. If it's like for a particular level of office, you could always call, like if it was from someone at an elementary school, you could call the school, depending on if it's someone in the office or not, because they can help you. If it's a language issue, we have translators in the district who can help you. If it's, you're concerned about sharing at the site level and you want to ask the elementary office to help you, because sometimes you don't need to write it. You can talk to someone about it if it's not under uniform complaint process. But if it is, you can always give me a call and I can talk with you about it. And we can help you write it if needed.
Thank you. And then the last one I have right now kind of piggybacks on that one. If I do make a complaint, how do I know that the school will not take it out on my child?
Well, whenever anyone makes a complaint, one of the basic laws is that there's no retaliation towards the student. Now, what that means is that they're not going to be treated differently or poorly because they made the complaint. So if, for example, you reported a student was bullying your child, the child who is being investigated for bullying would be told, this complaint has come forward. Their parents would be told this complaint has come forward. We want to let you know that while we're investigating and afterwards, there's no retaliation to anyone who's participating in the investigation process, including yourself, right? Including to the person who's accused of being the bully. And we say that to both sides, that retaliation is not allowed. And if something comes up that feels retaliatory, that should be addressed with the administration right away so that it can be looked at and observed and talked about to make sure that retaliation is not occurring. Let's say a complaint was made about a teacher, which doesn't necessarily fall under the uniform complaint process because it's a personnel complaint, and the child gets a poor grade in the class. Well, the question would be, was the child already getting a poor grade in the class? Did the child not turn in the work for the class? Were they absent many times and so they didn't get classwork done? And is that why they got a poor grade? Or did they have an A and then the teacher felt that, the parent complained unjustly or something like that, and then they gave them a poor grade? So that's part of the investigation. Was it retaliation or was it just kind of a consequence of not doing my work that I got a poor grade? So we do look at that if the complaint comes forward, if the concern comes forward of retaliation.
Okay, thank you so much. Right now, those are the only questions I have. Do you have some more to share with
I would just say that we are usually pretty successful in resolving complaints at the school sites and at the different offices. And so I do really encourage you to come forward and share your concern so that we can address it. Because, the principals, the assistant principals, the counselors, they all want, the school to have a positive climate. They want it to feel safe for students. But, often there's a lot of kids all at once, maybe on the playground or at the lunch area, and they may not have heard what one student said to another student. and the student maybe didn't tell them during the school day, but they came home and told you. And so we need you to help us out by communicating to us if your child is sharing that there's a problem so that we can address it. And, often I'll have students or parents say, well, the rec aide was standing right there, right? And they know, but when there's 500 kids or 200 kids on a playground, even if someone's right in front of you, I might not be looking at them. I might not be listening to them. I'm looking at some kids farther away who are maybe arguing over a ball or something of that nature. So even if something is near me, I might not have heard it. I might not have seen it. And so we do rely on our families to help us. If something happened at school that, wasn't reported during the school day, we do want to hear about it so it can be addressed and we can make sure it doesn't happen again.
No, that's a really good point to end on. And, we are a partnership, right? The school, the home, we're a partnership. And so we want to support the parents, and we also want to get the support of the parents as well. So this is great information. Thank you, Ms. Dalton, for coming and sharing. Hopefully our parents won't have to use the uniform complaint procedures process, but having the information, having access to it, knowing they have access to you, and if they need to is great. It's very empowering. So I want to say thank you for being here with us this evening. Thank you to our parents and our guardians for spending your Monday evening with us. Spring break is just around the corner. As a matter of fact, it's next week. I'm hoping that you have an enjoyable, safe, and relaxing spring break, and you come back, and the students come back to school recharged and ready for the last few months of school. So take care. Thank you. And we'll hope to see you again soon.